Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Forzy, and today I'm going to be showcasing how I make my money in Classic Era WoW through profession crafting. So, buying materials off the AH, crafting something, and then reselling it for a profit. So, it's a pretty simple method, and you can make some passive income, so you don't have to necessarily be actively playing the game to make your money. And that's something I really like about it. It pays for my raid consumes and all that jazz. So, let's get started. Alright, so to start out, we're going to need to download two add-ons. We're going to need to download Trade Skill Master and Auctionator. So Trade Skill Master is a profession overhaul add-on that gives you a whole bunch of additional information. However, it's a little broken in Classic Era, so you have to use Auctionator as a sort of workaround so that you can actually get up-to-date price data for the different profession items. So what TSM will do is essentially scan the auction house using Auctionator and then do the math for you on what items are or what materials cost to be able to craft something, and then what that crafted item will sell for. So once you've downloaded those two add-ons, you'll pop into game and click on the TSM minimap icon. It looks like a little gear. So we'll pop that open. This gives you a whole bunch of extra information that I don't really use much, but the critical piece is to come over to the settings tab, go down to crafting on the left side, and wherever you see DB market or DB min buyout, you'll need to change the string to ATR value. What that's doing essentially is changing the code to say use Auctionator's most recent scan instead of TSM's data, because TSM's data for Classic is from a ridiculously long time ago. It's not useful information. So once you have that changed, you also need to come down to the default craft value method section and change. There'll be a DB min buyout string here and another DB market. We're going to change both of those to ATR value as well. And then this decimal here is kind of our factor of safety, if you will. So whatever profit margin TSM calculates for crafting a certain item, it's going to multiply that by 0.9, assuming that, so first there's the AH cut of 5%, and then I like to, it starts at 0.95 because of that AH cut. I like to set it at 0.90 just to have a little bit of extra safety in the items that I'm crafting. So once you have this set up, you'll be able to jump straight into the next step. All right, now that we have TSM and Auctionator downloaded and configured, we're going to go ahead and start scanning for price data. So we'll come to any auctioneer. On the bottom, there's a tab named Auctionator. We'll click on that, and then in the top right corner, we'll click on Full Scan. Now what that's going to do is scan every item that's currently posted on the auction house and kind of just record that data. And then it will use that data to essentially feed it to TSM and have it do the math for us on what items are profitable to craft at the moment and which items aren't. Alright, so for the sake of this video, I'm going to be using Alchemy to kind of showcase what I do. It's the one I'm most familiar with, but it's important to note that you can do this with any profession. So if I pop open my cooking window, you can see that a lot of stuff that you can cook just isn't profitable. So keep that in mind, but I'm going to be using Alchemy for the sake of showcasing this video. So pop open the Alchemy window. I see that I can make 2 gold and 60 silver profit crafting Elixir of the Mongoose. Now I also know that this is a commonly used raid consume, so I know that there's going to be some demand for this item, and I can also check the individual prices of stuff here at the bottom right corner of these pop-up windows. So Mongoose is currently selling for about 10 gold, the Plague Bloom is sitting at about a gold 66 silver, and the Mountain Silver Sage is about a gold 50 silver. Now, a couple things that you need to keep track of. One is generally how much herbs sell for. So sometimes there's just a shortage of a given herb on the market and its price spikes, and with it, the price of those potions spike. However, if you buy a bunch and you don't sell it immediately, then you're stuck with some potions that you crafted for a whole lot of money and the prices come back down. So generally you want to just be aware of how much stuff sells for roughly, so that you're not spending an exorbitant amount of money to buy some materials because there's just a shortage at the moment. So generally items like that I try to just avoid like the plague. So Elixir of the Mongoose is a good example of something I would craft right now. Let's take a look at these specific materials though. So search for some Plague Bloom. We can see that that price matches what TSM scan or Auctionator scan is showing in TSM. So I can take a closer look here. We see there's a lot posted at this price. That's a good thing. So next item we'll look at is Mountain Silver Sage. pop that open, and there's a good quantity here too. So this is perfect setup to be able to buy a bunch of these materials for a relatively cheap price, craft some Elixir of the Mongoose, and resell. Now, you'll notice that I didn't go buying Plague Bloom before I checked the Mountain Silver Sage. And that's really important. If you're crafting a potion and you just start buying stuff before you've checked that there's enough supply of all the materials, you might get into a situation where you buy a bunch of Plague Bloom and there's just no Mountain Silver Sage posted on the auction house. So you'll end up just sitting on a bunch of Plague Bloom that you can't do anything with, and now you've spent up a whole bunch of money on something that's not helpful to you at the moment. So always check, always check that there's a sufficient quantity of all the materials that you need to craft something before you start buying anything. Now in this example, I will go ahead and buy, let's say, 60 Mountain Silver Sage. We'll come back over to Plague Bloom. We'll buy 60 Plague Bloom, which is enough to craft 30 Elixir of the Mongoose. So I'll come over here, type in 30 and queue it up. So now I can see that I have 30 Elixir of the Mongoose queued. You can see how much I stand to make from crafting these 30 Elixir of the Mongoose and what materials it'll cost me to craft them. Now, I don't want to get into too many specifics because if I explain everything in detail, I won't be able to make any money through the competition, at least in theory. So I'm going to leave it there in terms of the specific items, but the big things that I want to make sure everybody is aware of before they start trying this method is 3 things. One is checking to make sure that there's a sufficient quantity of whatever materials you need to craft that number of whatever item you want to craft. So making sure that there's enough Mountain Silver Sage and Plague Bloom on the market at that price. So if somebody posts 1 Plague Bloom for a gold less than the next guy, TSM scans that, it says, oh, Plague Bloom's selling for super cheap right now, and it looks like it's a great deal, but maybe there's only 1 posted at that price, so it's not helpful. So always check that there's enough of each material before you start buying stuff. The next thing is to pay attention to those market trends. If something is spiking in price, just avoid it. It's not worth it. It's not worth spending a whole bunch of money on those materials, crafting the consumes that are inflated in price, and then a week later they come down and you've lost money on that craft. So avoid items that have spiked in price, and generally just try to pay attention to the market trends and be aware of how much different materials typically go for, and just don't buy them if they're exceedingly expensive. And the last tip is to focus on items that are in demand. So items like raid consumes, items that players want repeatedly and want all the time, so that it's easy to make those sales and generate the profit. So if you craft something and it takes forever to sell, then that's just gold sitting in your mail or your auction house waiting to be cashed in. But if you're focusing on high demand items, it doesn't take as long to get your gold back. So you can buy more stuff, craft more stuff, and repeat the cycle. All right, that's all I've got for this video. If you have any questions about getting your add-ons installed or configured, just go ahead and drop them in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer questions down there. If you found this video helpful, make sure to drop a like and sub. Thanks for watching.